Hello, and welcome to Your Vote Counts, a public, informational, nonpartisan program designed to get the public acquainted with the candidates vying for the 2024 primary election local races of Salem City Mayor, Salem City Council, Marion County Commissioners, and Polk County Commissioners. These interviews come to you through the producers at Capital Community Media with the questions and moderators from the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk counties. All candidates for these races were invited, and all but one chose to participate. Candidates did not receive the questions prepared by the League of Women Voters ahead of time. They were invited to do a 2-minute opening, addressing their background and qualifications for the office, and 2-minute closing remarks. At this point, I want to introduce myself as Barbara Sellers Young from the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk counties, and I'd like to introduce to you Chris Hoy, who is running for mayor. Welcome, and we look forward to your opening remarks.
Thank you. Forward, neutral, reverse. Those are the words I used 2 years ago when I first ran for mayor. I talked about Salem being at a crossroads, about building on the momentum we've created these past few years and moving forward, or stopping where we were and leaving everything in limbo while we idle, or reversing course and turning back around to the old road where decisions were driven by the developers who financed many local campaigns. I talked about needing a mayor who was ready to hit the ground running, how there was no time to spend learning what the city does or how things work. I talked about how my life experience and my years of public service have prepared me well for this role, and how I believed I offered this vision and leadership skills necessary to keep the city moving forward. Now, here we are, just 2 short years later, and I'm running for re-election. And I bring all of that experience with me. I bring the experience of a 4th-generation Oregonian, the experience of a person born to a single mother struggling with substance abuse, the experience of a child placed for adoption, the experience of a person raised in a working-class family on the Oregon coast, the experience of a son whose mother suffered from mental illness and who died while a patient at the state hospital, the experience of a 30-year law enforcement professional, the experience of a labor union local president, the experience of a person who has run a residential alcohol and drug treatment program, the experience of someone who has worked with domestic violence offenders and survivors, the experience of a Salem City Councilor and Council President, the experience of the Vice Chair of the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance working with regional partners to tackle homelessness, the experience of the President of the Salem Housing Authority Board of Directors, the experience of a state representative, and now the experience of being mayor of Salem for the past 16 months. And we're just getting started. I believe in Salem, and I have a record of getting things done. I'm asking Salem voters to give me 2 more years to keep the momentum going.
Thank you very much for those opening comments. I really appreciate them. You mentioned your experience in general. So what would be specifically the experience in working with diverse groups?
Well, first let me just start with, I live in Northeast Salem, which is the most diverse part of Salem. It's a majority-minority area. I've lived there for 20 years, and I love where I live. So just living every day in Northeast Salem is working with diverse groups. I've also worked closely with the folks from Enlace. I've worked with the leaders of Mano a Mano. I've worked with all sorts of different people in trying to make decisions as we move the city forward.
Phrase it this way, how would you reflect your experience of living in Northeast Portland and your other experience to create a broad base for city planning and decision making?
So I live in Northeast Salem, just to be clear. There's been historic racism that has persisted throughout the United States from our history, and that is true also here in Salem. We have done a lot of work here in Salem to try to address that and to reverse some of those things. We've actually recently developed an equity lens when we consider capital projects. Before, we used to try to distribute projects equally around the city. Now we actually look at equity in terms of making those decisions. We have the census data that considers income, it considers disability, whether you have a car, it considers gender and race and a lot of different things. And we actually apply that score as one of the factors when we're making decisions, and to try to make sure that we are applying the capital resources in an equitable manner throughout the city.
And do you see that as creating a vibrant and livable downtown for business and citizens?
Well, our downtown is critical, and that's one of the things I ran on when I first ran for mayor. And yes, I think that when our whole city thrives, our downtown has a better chance. We're working really hard to make our downtown a place where people want to come and recreate and also to live. We have hundreds of people living downtown now that we didn't have in the past.
And do you see that then contributes to taking buildings that have been empty and filling them with businesses or residents? I mean, do you see something coming up in the future in relationship to those?
Well, we have a policy now, since I've been on council, that we try to use our urban renewal dollars to help invest in affordable housing. So in a lot of the places that you see downtown where old buildings are being converted, or maybe some are being torn down and reconstructed, for instance, at the old Nordstrom site where the Rivenwood apartments are, those are some beautiful market rate apartments, but 15% of the units there are affordable because we used one of the tools that we have available to us to incentivize the builder to maintain affordability in some of those units. At our new Block 50, it'll be the same thing. Pretty much every new development you see in one of our urban renewal areas, it'll have an affordable housing component in it.
And in looking at all of that, the primary thing you want to always have to deal with is a budget. And I think that's probably something that people least understand about how the government operates. So can you explain to us the composition of the budget committee and its processes?
Sure. I'm fortunate because I've worked with public budgeting. I've worked throughout my career, and now at my time on the city council for the past 7 years. So I've worked a lot with public budgeting. So the process is prescribed by law. So we have a budget committee that's comprised of 18 people. That's the 8 city councilors and the mayor, and then 9 additional public members that we appoint. So people apply, and so we have a person representing every ward, and then an at-large position. And so those 18 people receive the city manager's recommended budget, which we're going to receive here in a couple of weeks. We consider what we want to do with that. We can start over, we can make subtle changes, we can make no changes, we can do whatever we want as a budget committee. And everybody gets one vote, whether you're a city councilor or just a budget committee member, and the majority rules. And then the outcome of that process is sent to the city council for adoption. We have, once it comes to city council, of course, there's just 9 of us then. We each still just have one vote. And we have the opportunity to make changes from that recommended budget within certain limitations. I think it's no more than 10% change in any one fund. So it's not, the budget committee's product is not the final product, but it's close. So that process will take place. We've already had 2 meetings, and we'll have a few more, and it has to be adopted by the end of June. We have to have a balanced budget. Unlike the federal government, we don't get to just keep kicking the can down the road. We actually have to have a balanced budget adopted by the end of June.
And just a follow-up question in relationship to that. In terms of, I think most people would be interested in how often you meet. What you're describing seems to me a really deeply considered process. So you meet once a month, or you meet, every other week?
It depends, is my best answer. It's usually the budget committee meets 4 to 8 times between basically April and the end of May. Mm-hmm. And so, and it depends on how many meetings we decide we need to have and those sorts of things. But generally it's every other week or so, or once a month, depending on, like I said, what the particular committee finds necessary.
So it's an intensive experience.
It's a very intensive experience.
So related to the budget, we always have taxes and raising taxes, and which is always a concern for people.
Yes.
So a potential question is, what are some alternative local funding sources that, besides taxes, that exist that you can, as mayor, discover through the governmental processes that assist small cities like Salem?
Well, we look everywhere we can to find additional revenue, but I would say almost always that comes from taxes somewhere. Now, whether it's a local tax or a state tax or a federal tax, that's the question. So we've gotten a lot of federal grants this past year, a lot of federal money we brought into Salem to work on various projects, but that ultimately comes from tax money. It just comes from the federal government and their tax process. Or if we get money from the state, that's going to come from whatever tax that they impose to get that money. Generally, the state government is funded by income tax. And local government, like the city of Salem, is primarily funded by property taxes. So so pretty much anything that runs the government is going to come from a tax. It's a question of whether it's just going to come from the property tax that we levy, or whether it would come from some extra fee. We've imposed an operations fee on your utility bill. You may have seen that helps fund the city government. There are a variety of options that way, but everything ultimately is a tax of some sort when it comes to the government.
Now, can you give me an example? You said you got federal funds to support projects. Can you give me an example of what one of those might be?
Sure. Gosh, which one to pick? We got $1 million to plant trees in primarily North and Northeast Salem, because that's an area of really low tree canopy. So we got I think it was from the Department of Agriculture, we got $1 million to plant more trees. We got money to improve McGilchrist. You see that it's closed right now, parts of it, because we're doing a project out there. It was our 7th application for money, but we finally got got enough money put together, and we got a federal grant thanks to our U.S. senators and representatives in Congress to complete that project. So it's going to be a huge project out in McGilchrist. Those are just a couple.
Thank you for those. Mm-hmm. What do you see the role of the city in addressing unemployment?
Well, that's a tough one because we don't have a direct role in that. I mean, cities are set up to provide public safety, infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, libraries, parks, that sort of thing. I think we certainly need to have a vibrant city so we can attract employers who want to be here. We can do things to help them be to remove barriers to help companies relocate to our area and that sort of thing. I think that's how we can help with unemployment, create an environment where jobs can thrive, where companies can thrive.
And do you see any of those new jobs as green jobs?
Well, hopefully. We don't always get to control who comes here. SEDCOR does our economic development and our recruitment that way, but we try to, we have a climate action plan and a lot of priorities to try to protect our climate, but we don't always get to decide who relocates to our area. But that's certainly something that is a priority for the council. We recently got an electric truck electric charging station that's probably going in out near the airport, which is a really exciting thing. So we'll be able to fuel big 18-wheelers that are electric as those come online. So that's one area for a green job.
Does that funding come from the federal?
It's private money.
Private money.
Yeah, it wouldn't be coming. We have property that we would lease to them, and then it would be they may be getting some federal money that I'm not aware of. I don't know, but it's private money.
And finally, I think it's time for your closing remarks.
All right.
If you have them. And thank you for answering the questions.
Well, thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties and CC Media for the opportunity to speak to Salem residents. We're just getting started. We passed a $300 million community improvement bond. We've opened micro-shelter communities, affordable housing projects, permanent supportive housing, and a low-barrier shelter. Our downtown is in the middle of a renaissance with hundreds of people living in our vibrant city center, with hundreds more units on the way. And we have returned commercial passenger air service at our airport. But it's not enough, because people are still living on the streets, and we must solve our revenue crisis. We have to complete the work of our climate action plan and rewrite our transportation system plan. We can't lose the momentum we've generated by heading down the wrong road. Salem is moving forward, and we have a lot of work ahead, and I know how to get things done. I've worked very hard to earn your trust. I've shown up, and I've done the hard work, and I'm asking voters for 2 more years to keep the momentum going. Please visit chrishoyforsalem.com to learn more and to donate to our campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to thank Capital Community Media for their extensive technology and producer skills used to create this program. And thank you to the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties for the design and preparation of the program. And thanks to you, the public, for watching in order to become an informed voter. For more local, state, and national voter information on candidates and ballot issues, visit Vote 411 after April 15th, when candidate data is posted. You will have until April 30th to register to vote or make changes to your registration. Ballots go out on May 1st and will be accepted and counted if postmarked before or on May 21st. Elections matter, and remember to vote because your vote counts. Thank you.